Want to stay up to date with everything that's happening on the show? Or do you have a story that you'd like to submit for one of our Listener Stories episodes? You can get in touch with the show via the website at www.hauntedukpodcast.com, on Instagram at hauntedukpodcast, on X at hauntedukpod, or you can email us at contactus@hauntedukpodcast.com. We're also on Facebook and TikTok. And if you want to support the show, you can do it via either Patreon or Ko-fi. Both platforms have exactly the same content, but work in slightly different ways. One of the advantages of Patreon is its sleek user interface, but if you want to avoid those pesky additional charges Apple, Google, and Patreon apply to your subscription, then why not give Ko-fi a try? Simply open a browser window and type ko-fi/Haunted UK Podcast. That's Ko-fi/Haunted UK Podcast, and you'll soon find us. Whichever platform you choose, we're sure you'll enjoy the bonus content. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the episode. This was when the first strange thing happened. My father unlocked the car and got in, followed by Charlotte, who got in the back. As I went to open the door to get in, my attention was drawn to the window of the master bedroom. I have no idea why. There were no noises or anything which would have drawn my gaze to it, but for some inexplicable reason, I felt that I had to look up there. As I glanced up, I could have sworn that I saw someone move from the window and back into the depths of the room. I couldn't have described whether it was a man or woman. I just saw a shape of some sorts. But it was definitely there. This is episode 51 of the Haunted UK podcast, and in this episode, we hear about the disturbing series of events that plagued a family 30 years ago. The following listener story was sent into the show in the early months of 2023. In all honesty, I don't think I've ever read something that has chilled me so much in my life. As with all listener stories, I replied to the sender and asked for not only further details, but for permission to use this as a standalone episode. The sender agreed, so what you're about to hear is the story of Libby, as we'll call her family, and their completely terrifying experiences. Names, locations, and other potentially sensitive details have either been changed or left out entirely at the request of Libby. This is their story. My name is Libby, and I've been a regular listener to your podcasts for the last 12 months. I found it whilst searching for something to listen to after I'd finished the brilliant Battersea Poltergeist. I simply wanted to listen to stories being told in a sincere and engaging manner, and your show is just perfect. Not made up of multiple presenters talking over each other, or judging witnesses in relation to their own personal experiences. You simply, respectfully, tell the stories and leave the listeners to make up their own minds. The experiences which occurred in my story only cover a time period of around 10 months. But these experiences changed not only my life, but also the lives of my mother and father forever. The only person who I've ever shared the full extent of what happened over those 10 months with is my best friend Charlotte, who was also my best friend at the time. She never judged me and saw in full the effects which these horrible incidents had upon myself and my family. So these events took place 30 years ago when I was just 12 years old. I had a fantastic childhood, and my parents were wonderful people. Kind, caring, loving, funny, but never pushovers. My father had his own antiques business, and my mother was a history lecturer at a university. They were incredibly sensible with their money, and because of this, our lives were very comfortable. But they didn't just throw money around. I had my list of jobs to do throughout the week, and I always felt that this kept me grounded throughout my childhood and teenage years. We lived in a village in Gloucestershire, in a lovely 4-bedroom house. It was always so warm, homely, and friendly. There was never an atmosphere, never any cold spots or those unusual feelings of being watched as you'd normally find in your typical haunted house story. The house simply wasn't haunted. It was just beautiful. The surrounding area had literally everything a child growing up could wish for. Streams, woodland, fields, so many opportunities to explore and be out in the open air with friends. As I've mentioned, my best friend was, and still is, Charlotte, and we were inseparable growing up. I know it's a cliche, but we did everything together. Our first cinema experiences, birthdays, we even used to alternate our Christmas dinners at each other's houses. School holidays were a time when we were both always at each other's sides, and on a few occasions my father would take us both to house clearances when the opportunity presented itself to him. He had a number of friends in the business who would contact him when properties needed clearing of their furniture. These were mostly the homes of elderly people who had sadly passed away, leaving their families, if they had families, with unwanted belongings which would normally have ended up going to the landfill. My father loved these opportunities and often found hidden treasures and beautiful pieces of antique furniture which he would happily either purchase or just take away for free. On many occasions, it would be a welcome relief for these families to see these possessions either go to a good home or to just simply be taken off their hands. Some of them probably only being interested in the value of the house which they'd now inherited. It was at one of these house clearances that my story begins. After a phone call from one of his contacts, my father came into the garden where Charlotte and I were and asked if we'd like to go for a drive to a house to have a look around. We jumped at the chance. So my father popped around to Charlotte's house to let her mother know that she'd be with us for the afternoon and that she'd also be staying for dinner. We jumped into the car and off we went. We were probably driving for around 25 minutes, but I couldn't tell you where we were going as Charlotte and I were chatting away constantly and not really taking much notice of anything else. When we finally arrived at our destination, we found ourselves outside a large detached 3-bedroom house. The driveway was also large and fully gravelled, and there was a car and a small van already there. The car belonged to the son of the owner of the house who had passed away a few months earlier, and the van belonged to my father's friend who had called him about the house clearance in the first place. My father told us to wait in the car for a minute or so until he'd had the chance to speak to his friend. We watched him meet his friend at the door, and then the pair of them went inside the house. A few minutes later, my father came back out and said that we could all go in and take a look around, but told us to be very careful. We waited with him as he went to the boot of the car and grabbed some of his card tags. These tags had a hole at the top with string attached, and he used them to mark up items which he was either interested in or would be definitely taking. I'd seen him use these so many times at other clearances which I'd been to. As we went inside the hallway of the house, I was immediately struck by how old but beautiful the decor was. It had a patterned tiled floor which almost ran the length of the house. From this hallway there were 4 large rooms, a library and kitchen to the left, and a dining room and living room to the right. The stairs were directly to the left as you came through the front door. Then there was a large understairs cupboard, a door which led to the cellar, and then the doors for the library and the kitchen. My father started in the library room and gradually worked his way around the lower floor of the house. There were a number of items that he picked up on straight away, such as a coffee table, a writing desk and a leather chair. Tags were tied around each item as he went around the house. We went down into the cellar, but there wasn't much there at all of interest to my father, so then we went upstairs. All the time that this was going on, the son of the deceased owner was on the phone constantly in the dining room. We could hear him chatting away at various volumes as we made our way around the house. I have no idea who he was talking to, but it sounded official and important. My father found a few more items of interest as we made our way around 2 of the 3 bedrooms, but it was the master bedroom which contained an item which stopped my father in his tracks. The master bedroom was larger than the other 2 rooms and was located at the front of the house over the top of the dining room. There were the usual items in there: a large dark wooden framed bed, 2 bedside cabinets with old lamps on each of them, and a large wardrobe. This wardrobe was very imposing. It was tall, with ornate carvings which stretched around the entirety of the top edges. The 8 legs which it stood on were also beautifully carved. It was more a work of art than a piece of furniture, and my father was awestruck by it. There were 2 sets of double doors which were separated by a series of shelves which ran from top to bottom of the wardrobe. And when both sets of doors were opened, it shocked me just how large it seemed to be inside. Both sets of doors had locks on, which looked like they were made from brass or something like that. They were very decorative and still had a key in each lock, which my father checked, and both worked perfectly. All traces of clothes and belongings had been removed, so you were presented straight away with a picture of just how big this thing was. The wood was a very dark color, and it looked tremendously heavy, and this was confirmed when my father tried to lift it from one end, failing miserably, then saying, "We'll need an army to move this." He then called downstairs to his friend to come up to take a look at the wardrobe and to try and work out a way for getting it out of the house. As they chatted, Charlotte and I went back out onto the landing and noticed a pull cord for the loft hatch. I called out to my father, who came out to us, and I pointed to the pull cord. He duly pulled on it, and after a loud click, the loft hatch swung open, revealing a fold-up ladder. My father managed to grab a hold of the edge of the ladder and pulled on it so that it extended to the floor. We all then climbed up the ladder and into the loft. My father's friend also joined us, and he managed to find a light switch which illuminated 2 bulbs. The loft space was huge, and it looked like something from the movie The Goonies. There were boxes all over the place, containing papers, clothes, and old photographs. There were also a number of large old traveling trunks which were locked tight. We all searched around but couldn't find keys at all. After around 10 more minutes of exploration, my father called time on our stay in the loft. The lights were turned off, and we all made our way back down the ladder and onto the landing, where the sun was now standing. I can remember that he seemed in a rush now, and asked my father and his friend if they could wrap things up as he needed to be somewhere. Charlotte and I went downstairs and left the 3 of them organizing the best day to collect the items which my father had shown interest in. We stepped outside onto the drive and waited by the car, chatting away happily, and it wasn't too much longer until we saw the 3 of them appear outside the front door. They shook hands, and the son got in his car and drove off. My father and his friend chatted for a few more minutes, then he also got into his van and drove away, leaving just my father, Charlotte, and myself. This was when the first strange thing happened. My father unlocked the car and got in, followed by Charlotte, who got in the back. As I went to open the door to get in, my attention was drawn to the window of the master bedroom. I have no idea why. There were no noises or anything which would have drawn my gaze to it, but for some inexplicable reason, I felt that I had to look up there. As I glanced up, I could have sworn that I saw someone move from the window and back into the depths of the room. I couldn't have described whether it was a man or woman. I just saw a shape of some sorts. But it was definitely there. My father stepped back out of the car and asked what I was looking at. I told him that I thought I'd seen someone in the bedroom window, but he assured me that we were the only ones in the house, so it must have been a reflection or something. I got in the car and we drove back home. That evening, Charlotte slept over at our house and we had a Chinese takeaway and watched a movie. The events and activities of earlier that day had almost been forgotten. But this wouldn't last for long. A few days later, I'd come home from school to find a large van outside our house with 3 men and my father grappling with that huge wardrobe from the house we'd been to. Apparently, the other items had been dropped off at my father's antique shop, but he'd taken such a shine to this piece of furniture that he decided to keep it at home. Many components had to be removed to help lighten the load, such as the doors, the feet and the carvings around the top, but it still proved to be a very heavy and awkward item to maneuver around. They'd all done extremely well to get it out of the van, through the front door and to the bottom of the staircase, but the stairs would pose a huge number of problems for them.
Yeah, right, that's it. Go back a bit, okay. Yeah, a bit more. All right, okay.
But hours later, somehow, they'd managed to get it into the rear spare bedroom. My bedroom was also at the back of the house, whereas my mother and father's bedroom was at the front. The other bedroom had been converted into an office not long after we'd moved in. The wardrobe was fully reassembled in its new home and placed against the wall, which separated this bedroom from mine. The bedroom door was also on this wall, and when opened, it shielded the wardrobe from view until you were actually inside the room. My mother had been out with friends whilst all of this had been going on, and with my father and his friends now downstairs having a drink after their efforts, I was left alone upstairs getting changed in my room. As I came out of my bedroom, the spare bedroom door was wide open. I don't know why, but I felt compelled to go inside. I walked in and sat down on the sofa bed which had been in there instead of a full-size bed. This was directly opposite the wardrobe, but it was a large room, as were all of the bedrooms. I have no idea what I was doing in there. Just sitting there, staring at this wardrobe. It almost began to feel like I was going into some sort of daydream, when all of a sudden, I was shaken out of my trance by a bang, coming from inside the wardrobe. My heart started to race immediately, then another bang came. But this sounded like it was deep inside the wardrobe, and it was so forceful that I saw it move the door. I shot up from the sofa bed and ran out of the room, closing the door behind me and heading downstairs. I didn't mention anything to my father, choosing instead to keep it to myself. Later that evening, I went upstairs to go for a shower before going to bed, and noticed that the spare bedroom door was open. I'd been with both my mother and father all night and couldn't remember one instance where either of them had gone upstairs, but I couldn't be 100% certain, so again, I closed the door and got ready for bed. After this, days and weeks were going by with nothing happening at all. Everything felt fine, but I began to notice a change in my mother's behavior. Something seemed wrong. She began to seem distant, uninterested in what others were up to. She looked exhausted, as if she hadn't been sleeping at all. In the past, when she would drive Charlotte and me to school, the car would be full of conversation, or we'd be singing along to the radio, but now, it was silence. I did ask her a few times if she was okay, but she just said that she was fine, just very tired, and not to worry. But I was worried. A few weeks after this, it was my mother and father's wedding anniversary, and as usual they would go out for a meal. It was a Saturday night, and the plan was for me and Charlotte to have a pizza and movie night at our house. But she'd come down with a heavy cold and couldn't make it. My mother was going to call the meal off, but I insisted that they still go out. It would only be for a few hours and I'd be fine. I could still have my pizza and watch some TV. It was the first time in a long while that I saw my mother smile and look happy. At around 6 p.m, a taxi appeared outside, and my mother and father went off for their meal and a few drinks. I got comfy in the living room with my pizza and began watching some of your typical Saturday night TV. Everything was fine for the first hour or so, but then the atmosphere in the whole house seemed to change. Looking back at it now, it felt as though everything that made the house happy, inviting, colourful and warm had been drained out of it. I can remember having the very real feeling that someone was in the house with me. It was horribly uncomfortable. I was literally too afraid to move from the sofa, so I just sat there, looking at the TV, but not taking any notice of it. It's so hard to describe what the atmosphere felt like, but I can only say that it felt as if the air had a thickness to it, a gloopy type of consistency, and every sound seemed amplified to the nth degree. But there was one sound that broke through the landscape of noise. A click and a creak. And I knew exactly what it was and where it was coming from. It was the door of the spare bedroom opening. I can vividly remember my heart feeling like it was going to burst through my chest as it was beating so hard and so quickly. As I sat there with pure fear beginning to wash over me, the living room went very cold, to the point where I could see my own breath. Then the doorbell rang. I don't think I've ever moved so quickly. I ran to the front door, unlocked it, and saw Charlotte's mother standing there smiling. "Your mum asked me to pop round to see if you were okay or if you needed anything." I was so relieved. She came in and sat down and asked if I was all right again, as I seemed a little jumpy. In this short amount of time, the room had gone back to its more normal temperature. We went into the kitchen and she put the kettle on to make herself a drink, and while she was doing this, I made the excuse that I just needed to grab my school bag from my room, but I really wanted to check the spare bedroom door. As I was going up the stairs, I can remember thinking to myself that it was unusual for my mother to ask Lily, Charlotte's mum, to come over and check on me. She'd never done this before. Don't get me wrong, staying in our house on a Saturday night on my own as a 12-year-old girl wasn't a regular thing at all, but when my mother and father had gone out in the past for a little while, there was never a need to ask Lily to come over. As I approached the room and the spare bedroom, I could see that the door was firmly closed. I was convinced that I'd heard the door creak open. I grabbed my bag and went back downstairs. Lily stayed for around another hour and then went back home, and it wasn't long after that that my parents came back. They looked like they'd had a great time, and we all sat in the living room chatting away. My mother even opened a bottle of wine and continued to drink and enjoy herself. The mood seemed to lift the atmosphere in the house to what it had always been, and after a while, we all made our way to bed. The house soon fell silent, and I quickly drifted off to sleep, but the peace and quiet didn't last long. I had no idea what time it was, but I was suddenly woken up by the sound of a deep thud coming from the spare bedroom. It sounded as if someone was hitting their fists against the wall. I got out of bed and couldn't see the landing light bleeding underneath my door, so I assumed that nobody was out of bed. I opened my door and looked directly at the spare bedroom door, but this was still closed. The sound stopped, so I closed my door and went to get back into bed, when there were 3 distinct thuds against the wall. Then I heard something that sounded like a voice talking, but I couldn't make out what it was saying. Now, for anybody listening to this, you're probably all thinking that there would be no way on this planet that you'd go into that room to find out what was making those noises. But for some reason, the huge weight of curiosity seemed to push me back out onto the landing and back in front of that bedroom door. I even began to feel anger. At what, I have no idea, but I opened the door and walked inside the room. Everything was quiet. No thudding, no voice, nothing. With the curtains open, there was easily enough light to see that nothing was out of place. I stood in front of that huge dark form which was the wardrobe, willing something to happen. But it didn't. I think I even felt a pang of disappointment. I let out a sigh and went to walk out of the room, but stopped when I heard a light squealing noise coming from the wardrobe, and then watched in absolute terror and amazement as the key in the left-hand side set of doors started to turn. Then there was a click. Something had unlocked the doors from the inside. My breathing began to increase as I became rooted to the spot, unable to move or scream. Then the wardrobe door opened, and out stepped my mother. What was she doing in there? Why was she in there? And how had she been able to unlock the doors from the inside while the key was still in the lock? Even in the darkness of the house, I could see that something wasn't right with her at all. She just stood there staring at me, and the look in her eyes was something I'd never seen before and have never seen since.
"What are you doing here?"
she said, but her voice sounded quite angry and menacing. I can remember saying something like,
"Thought I heard some noises coming from in here and I just..."
But she cut me off with,
"You shouldn't be in here. Go back to bed."
Even typing this out all these years later, I still go very cold at the sight of my mother that night. Slowly, I made my way to my bedroom door, which I quickly opened and closed, and then stood up against it. Then, she did something that really sent shivers and raised goosebumps that I can still feel. It sounded as if she was pressed up against the outside of my door, so close to me when she said,
"I can hear you. Get into bed."
I moved across the room and got into bed and pulled my covers tightly around me, fully expecting my mother to come in. But she didn't. There was nothing but absolute silence. It seemed like hours, but I finally fell asleep and woke up to a bright, sunny Sunday morning. I got up and went downstairs to see my dad outside pottering around in the garden, and my mother in the kitchen preparing our usual Sunday lunch. She turned around and smiled and asked if I wanted some breakfast. She seemed completely normal, nothing like the disturbing, scary person who I'd encountered in the spare room. I asked if she got out of bed in the early hours last night, as I thought I had heard someone wandering around, but she said, "Oh no, definitely not. I was dead to the world as soon as my head hit the pillow. Too much wine, I think." She chuckled, apparently oblivious to the night before. I decided not to pursue it any further. Had I really seen my mother come out of that wardrobe? Had I really heard the thumping noises against the wall? Or was this simply some sort of very real lifelike nightmare? More time went by, but I was beginning to notice little things happening throughout the house. For instance, I came home from school one afternoon to find nobody at home, but the shower on in the main bathroom. On another occasion, when both Charlotte and I were in my bedroom one evening, We heard the toilet flush, then the spare bedroom door open, and then close. At this moment in time, I hadn't told Charlotte about anything that had been going on, so when this happened, and we found nobody upstairs and nobody in the spare bedroom, even she became a little spooked and nervous. But it was another incident that involved my mother that confirmed to me that maybe I hadn't been dreaming that night when I saw her in the spare bedroom. It was early evening on a Friday. There was the usual hustle and bustle in the house with my father on the phone and my mother up and down the stairs putting clothes away and gathering up the washing. All was busy and as normal as could be until we heard a scream from upstairs. My father dropped the phone and ran upstairs, closely followed by me. As we got to the landing, we saw my mother outside of the open spare bedroom door with her hands covering her forehead above her right eye. There was blood dripping through her fingers and down the side of her face, and this really upset me to the point that I started to cry.
Oh my God, what the hell's happened?
I'm okay.
She looked absolutely terrified, and when my father asked her again what had happened, she explained that she was going to start putting some old clothes and towels into the wardrobe as it had just been standing empty since we'd had it, but tripped over the edge of the sofa bed and stumbled headfirst into the edge of the wardrobe. The cut was very nasty, so my father took my mother to hospital where she had to have stitches. She still has the scar today. Things took a strange turn after this incident. My mother literally never went back into that room until after all of this came to an end. She was afraid of something that she'd either seen or experienced, which caused her that injury. There was no way that she tripped over the edge of a sofa bed. Something else was at work here. But it wasn't until years later that I actually found out the truth. More time went by without too much going on, but all the little things that were happening seemed to be concentrated and focused on me and my mother, yet neither of us had any idea that the other had witnessed anything. We just never mentioned it. Until the day of my 13th birthday. My actual birthday was on a Thursday, but my parents had organized a party at our house for that weekend. A lot of friends from school were coming, as well as grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. It was something that I was really looking forward to. The weather for the weekend looked great, so my parents were also going to have a barbecue. Late on the Friday afternoon, my parents went out to get some last-minute shopping for the party, leaving me in the house alone. I'd had some amazing gifts for my birthday, so busied myself unpacking stuff out of boxes and finding suitable homes for it all in my room. However, all the while I was doing this, the atmosphere in the house seemed to slowly change. It was as if each room was making itself smaller, closing you deeper and deeper inside, letting you know it knew exactly where you were. It's only years later that I can try to find the words to go some way of explaining what it felt like. Friday night was a restless night for all of us for some reason. I don't think any of us slept very well at all. But when the morning came, I was greeted by bright sunshine. It seemed to burn away some of the grey, misty atmosphere that had begun to engulf the whole house. I could hear my mother and father in the garden, already making a start for the busy day ahead. So after getting ready, I joined them and helped out in any way I could, which involved me usually getting in their way. As the time of the party neared, a slow trickle of relatives began turning up, and conversation and laughter started to fill the house. It wasn't long before Charlotte and her parents arrived, and we squirreled ourselves away into a corner of the garden, happily chatting and waiting for our friends to turn up. An hour or so later, the party was in full swing, and the house was filled with a huge, happy atmosphere. Drinks flowed, music played, and everyone seemed to be having a great time. As the day turned to night and people began to filter away, only a few adults remained in the garden. My parents, Charlotte's parents, and my grandparents. They continued to enjoy the drinks while Charlotte and I decided to have a game or two of tracker, or the grown-up version of hide and seek. I went first, while Charlotte was left in the garden. Chuckling to myself, I ran indoors and sprinted around the house looking for somewhere to hide myself away. We'd done this so many times, but we were so bad at it because we'd just be laughing, which made each of us so easy to find. After dismissing the entire downstairs, I made a run for upstairs and straight for my parents' room. They had a king-size bed and the frame was made out of oak, so there was plenty of room for me to squeeze underneath. But as I lay there, I just felt it was too obvious, so I changed my mind. As I scurried along the landing, I noticed that the spare bedroom door was open. I had no idea whether it had been left open or closed, but I went in, pushed the door to, leaving it slightly ajar. As I stood in the room, I immediately noticed that there was no ominous atmosphere. No dark, thick treacle-like feel to the space. The curtains were wide open, and there was a light breeze coming in from the open window. Although it was starting to get dark, it was still light enough to leave the lights off. I looked straight at the wardrobe, and every single molecule in my body was telling me not to go near it. But something else was. I have no idea why I did it, but I unlocked and opened the left-hand set of double doors and glared inside the dark void, waiting for something else to come out. Just like that thing that looked like my mother. But nothing did. There was just darkness. I stepped inside and pulled the doors shut. As I stood there in the darkness, I began to quietly chuckle to myself, thinking of Charlotte roaming around the house trying to find me. I could just about hear the voices of everyone left in the garden still chatting away, and I could hear Charlotte talking as well. Then everything went completely quiet, as if somebody had put cotton in my ears. Then that nice, warm, calm atmosphere changed in a split second to something very, very dark and heavy. Then I heard the key turn in the lock on the outside, and the click of the locking mechanism engaging, trapping me inside this dark chamber. I stood frozen, rooted to the spot, absolutely terrified of what could be inside here with me. The heavy atmosphere then seemed to concentrate its focus to my left-hand side, as if it were a person or some sort of form standing next to me. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there. Then something whispered into my left ear.
Don't scream.
Then all hell broke loose. 2 hands gripped around my neck and started to squeeze, slowly cutting my ability to breathe off. I was desperately trying to prise these phantom hands from around my throat, but there was nothing there. I was simply clawing at my own skin. Then whatever this thing was that had a hold of me, it started to lift me off the ground. I continued to panic and scratch at my neck in a feeble attempt to escape the grip of this thing, but it was no good. I started to lash out with my legs and began to kick at the doors with all of my strength, and it worked. The 2 doors flung open and I was thrown out, landing heavily on my hands and knees. All of this probably lasted a few seconds, but it felt like minutes, and I seriously thought that had I not managed to kick those doors open, whatever was in that wardrobe would have killed me. I realized that this is an extremely strong statement to make, and whilst all of this sounds completely absurd, unbelievable, made up, I can assure you 110% that all of this happened. I sat there in a heap on the bedroom floor, desperately trying to catch my breath. Then the tears started to come, and within a few seconds there were streams pouring down my cheeks. I heard footsteps on the landing outside, and then the bedroom door burst open, and in ran Charlotte shouting,
I found you! I found you!
She stopped suddenly and stared at my neck.
What happened? Who did that? I'm getting your mum and dad.
And off she ran downstairs. It wasn't long before my mother and father were at the door with my grandparents and Charlotte's parents, and all of them were shocked at what they saw. Charlotte was also now in tears, and everyone was asking the same question. What happened to you? I just didn't know what to say. My mother helped me up and took me into my room, telling everyone else that we wanted some privacy and to go back downstairs. My father came into my room with a first aid kit and asked me what had happened. Had somebody attacked me? I said yes. I was attacked in the wardrobe. I hated that wardrobe. There was something in there. This made me cry even more. He came over to me, hugged me, and kissed the top of my head, then left the room and closed the door. My mother cleaned up my neck as best she could, but the scratches were so visible that there was no hiding them. We could hear lots of talking going on downstairs, with my father ending the party and apologizing to my grandparents and to Charlotte's parents. After a few minutes, the house went quiet, as we heard all of them leave. Then we heard my father come back upstairs, but instead of coming into my room, he went into the spare room. We heard banging and clattering through the wall, and my mother went in to see what he was doing. I followed shortly after and found my father breaking the wardrobe down into pieces. He'd unscrewed the doors, took the carvings from the top, and was splitting the side panels and shelvings apart with a crowbar. He didn't say anything. He just carried on destroying the wardrobe until it was in a manageable set of pieces that he could get down the stairs and out into the garden. His actions confirmed to me that he really did believe what I'd told him about being attacked by something while I was inside that wardrobe. But why was he so quick to take measures to destroy the thing? Had he seen something? The bruising and scratches on my neck soon healed, but not without them causing a series of events that had lasting effects on our family. My school chose to inform social services of my injuries, and my parents were questioned at length about what had caused them. I was even interviewed by a policewoman who was a specialist in talking to children who'd been abused. A dressing-up game with a scarf which went horribly wrong was blamed for the incident, but the few people who were there that evening knew that wasn't the case, and rumors started to get around. Only my mother, father, and I knew what had really happened. But how do you tell your teachers, or police, or social services, or even your friends, that you were physically attacked by an entity who had been brought into your home via an antique wardrobe? It still sounds so ridiculous even now. After the wardrobe had been taken apart, my father took the pieces to his shop and burned them in the yard. The house went back to normal, warm, homely, and friendly. No atmospheres or cold spots or those unusual feelings of being watched. This wasn't a haunted house. It was just beautiful. We all tried to continue as normal, as if nothing had happened, but many people had already made up their minds that either my mother or father had lost their temper with me, took out their anger on me. But this was absolute rubbish. But again, who's going to believe a 13-year-old girl? According to these people, I was just saying this because I was scared of what would happen if I told the truth. We all started to notice that party invites, gatherings at people's homes, and other types of social outings with friends were now few and far between, and this broke my mother's heart. Many of the friends that she trusted had now turned their backs on her, and I felt very much to blame for that. My mother and father would always tell me that I had nothing to feel guilty about, but I couldn't help it. Years went by. Charlotte and I made it through high school and onto university, then pursued our own careers. But we always remained in touch and met up whenever we could. And we still do. I lost my father to cancer in 2016, and my mother now lives in a 2-bedroom semi-detached house a few miles away from the village where all of this happened. She's happy enough, but obviously still misses my father greatly. She's made new friends and goes on trips, and we see each other whenever we get the time. Probably the same as every family. A few years before my father's passing, though, both he and my mother told me what had happened to them. This was when they'd moved from the area into the house where my mother is now. My father told me that strange things started to happen to him the day he and a few of his friends went to move the wardrobe from the old woman's house. He said that even when he was taking the doors off it, it seemed to give off a dark atmosphere, but he didn't really believe in anything paranormal or supernatural. He just thought it was the fact that he was in the house of a stranger who had passed away. That was until a few days later. He'd been working from home in the dining room one morning when he said that he heard what sounded like a series of bumps coming from upstairs, as if someone was being very heavy-footed. He was the only one in the house at the time. I was at school and my mother was at work. Thinking that there could be someone in the house, he went into the kitchen and grabbed a knife from the drawer and slowly made his way upstairs. As he got to the landing, he said he could have sworn he saw a dark figure enter the spare bedroom. As he moved towards the bedroom door, fully expecting it to be open, he found it firmly closed. He shouted through the door that he had a knife and that he was going to call the police, but there was no response. No sounds. Nothing. He opened the door to find the room empty, but the left-hand side wardrobe doors were open. He admitted that he had no idea if these had been left open by either myself or my mother, but he was certain that the last time he was in the room, those doors were shut. He rested the knife on the arm of the sofa and walked over to the open doors and peered inside. There was obviously nothing but an empty wardrobe. He said that as he stood there trying to figure out what could have made the noises, something pushed him forward into the wardrobe.
Oh, what the hell was that?
It was only his quick reaction by putting his arms out and hitting the back of the wardrobe that stopped him from falling completely inside it. He quickly regained his balance and turned around to see what or who had pushed him, but there was nobody there. Although he swore that he never had any further incidents like this one, he did say that one more thing happened to him that he'd never experienced before. He said that for a period of a few weeks, he was being plagued by very dark dreams, bordering on nightmares, but he never elaborated on what these dreams were about. He recalled that during one of these disturbing dreams, he woke up and found himself in the spare bedroom, standing in front of the wardrobe. All of the doors were closed, and he had no recollection of how he got there. He put it down to a case of sleepwalking, which had never happened to him before, and never happened again. My mother's experiences, however, were much more disturbing. My mother had never suffered with any form of depression, but she confessed to me that not long after that wardrobe had been moved into the house, she felt herself sinking deeper and deeper into a dark and miserable mindset. Nothing seemed to pull her out of it completely until the item had been taken apart and burned. She said that she began to also suffer with hallucinations, and they were always the same. It was an old woman with a haggard face and long, straggly grey hair. She was always in a type of long black dress, which was also very tatty and old. She saw her in the bathroom mirror, caught glimpses of her out of the corner of her eye when she was putting washing away or making the bed. She even confessed to seeing this woman in the back of her car late one evening when she was traveling home from work, and her reaction was so severe that she almost left the road and crashed.
Oh my God! Who are you? Leave me alone!
She then told me about the incident which led to her cutting her head open. A few weeks before this, my mother said that a cameo brooch which her grandmother had given her years ago had gone missing. I know of this brooch very well because my mother has since given it to me, but it was always in my mother and father's bedroom before this. She used to wear this occasionally when she went out, and it was always left in a glass dish on her bedside cabinet. But one day, it was there. The next, it was gone. She said she'd turned the house upside down looking for it, but it had simply vanished. Moving back to the day in question, my mother had taken a large washing basket full of old towels and other items into the spare bedroom to begin putting them away inside the wardrobe. She placed the basket by the sofa bed and began to sort the items out and refold them, when she heard a noise come from inside the wardrobe. She said it sounded like someone had dropped a heavy coin or similar item on the floor inside. Obviously curious, she opened the two right-hand side doors to see if anything had fell off inside, but instead of finding a part of a clothes rail or something like that on the floor, she found her cameo brooch. At first she was over the moon, happy to have finally found it, but then it dawned on her. How the hell did it get inside? She said she knelt down to pick it up, and as soon as her hand went in to grab it, the room went icy cold. And then she had the unmistakable feeling that someone was behind her. She said she quickly stood up, put the brooch in her pocket and turned around, but there was nothing there. She remembered shaking her head and thinking to herself to get it together. She picked up a few items to begin putting them inside the wardrobe, and as she turned to face the open doors, there was the old woman, hanging by her neck inside, but she was staring into my mother's eyes. My mother said that the old woman let out such a terrifying scream, which seemed to fill every corner of the room, but my father and I never heard anything. Like many of these experiences, my mother said that this lasted for a matter of a few seconds. In sheer panic and terror, my mother went to open the spare bedroom door, but in a cruel twist of fate, the already wide open right-hand side wardrobe door connected with the bedroom door handle, stopping it from fully opening. My mother was already moving to get out of the door when her momentum took her straight onto the corner of the partially open bedroom door, cutting her head open above her eye. She screamed out in pain.
Oh my God, somebody help me!
Which was the scream we heard downstairs, and squeezed out of the bedroom and onto the landing, which is where we found her. I found this experience completely horrifying, but I totally understood why she kept it from me as a young girl. Even today, she's still open to the possibility of all her sightings of the old woman being down to tiredness and exhaustion because of her feelings of depression. But I feel that deep inside, she knows better than that. I'm approaching my mid-40s now, but still remember every single incident that happened during those few months when what we thought was an innocent piece of furniture not only entered our home, but also entered our lives. To this day, I have absolutely no idea what was in that wardrobe, what was haunting it, possessing it, attached to it. But I know for a fact that all of my memories of that time were real. So as you say in so many of your episodes, it's down to you to decide what you believe. A huge thank you to Libby for sending her story into the show and for letting us use it for this episode. Personally, I cannot comprehend what the whole family must have gone through, not only with their paranormal experiences, but also with the cruelly veiled accusations of abuse towards Libby, when the real reasons would have been completely dismissed due to their fantastical nature. We've said so many times on this podcast that witnesses and their stories should be respected and not ridiculed, but unfortunately, this is not always the case. But it is on this show. I think this story may linger with you for some time. It certainly will with me, and I'm going to let it sit in my mind for a while as I try to process all of these terrifying events. So many questions whirring in my mind right now. What was the story with this wardrobe? Was it haunted by an entity? Had it taken the guise of someone Libby trusted the most, her mum? I also wondered about her friend's mum who popped round to check on her. Was she all that she seemed? After all, Libby did say it's something she wouldn't usually do. Was it the entity again disguising itself like a wolf in familiar clothing? The thought really does trouble me. Doppelgangers fascinate me too, and if you would like to hear more about such cases, then please check out our Doppelgangers episode in episode 31, season 4. Two short haunts also feature this strange kind of haunting, and that's Listen Now to Me and Mum, Is That You?, as well as our latest listener stories episode, Strange Residents, brilliantly told by Emma from Real Life Ghost Stories. Please give them a whirl, if you dare. And I must say, Libby's experiences have made me rather wary of antique furniture. What the hidden history and 1900s wardrobe might behold, for example, or a dresser, a mirror, a wrought iron bedstead. Leaving me to warn you thus, beware if you ever say purchase on a whim an Art Deco wardrobe from a flea market. You tell yourself that with a lick of paint it will be perfect. You get it home. It's a struggle up those stairs. It's heavy, cumbersome. You get it into your room and now it seems no paint could ever improve it. It's ugly now, burdensome. Soon odd sounds are heard within it. A rattling, coins dropping inside with dull thuds, sounds which chill your marrow. And then one day you see the key turning from the inside. Beads of sweat break on your brow, and you don't scream now. Instead, you get the hell out of that room and type the story to us, because the next person to be on this show will be you.